I want to start this video by telling you something you will not hear from most of the retirement content out there, including, if I am honest, some of my own earlier videos. I regret moving to the Philippines. Not the country itself, not the people, not the culture. I want to be precise about what I actually regret, because the distinction matters enormously for anyone watching this who is considering a similar move. My name is Mason Parker, and I am going to tell you exactly what went wrong, why I cannot simply reverse the decision the way you might assume, and what I wish someone had told me before I sold a house I can no longer afford to buy back into. Let me give you the financial reality first, because this is where the actual trap began, and it is the part almost nobody talks about honestly. When I sold my home in Arizona 4 years ago, I sold it for $342,000, which felt, at the time, like a genuinely healthy number. Housing prices in that particular market have increased by roughly 61% since I sold. The equivalent home in my old neighborhood, the one I specifically researched last month during a period I will get to shortly, now lists for approximately $550,000. I did not fully account, when I made my decision, for the possibility that American real estate would continue appreciating while I was gone, and that the gap between what I sold for and what I would need to buy back into would grow into something I could not realistically close, even accounting for 4 years of careful saving on a comparatively low cost of living. This is not a Philippines problem. This is a decision structure problem, and it is the first specific warning I want every person watching this to hear clearly. If you sell your primary residence to fund a move abroad, you are not simply relocating. You are exiting a specific housing market, potentially permanently, and that market does not wait for you to change your mind. The second issue, and this is the one that ultimately matters more than the financial calculation, involves my mother. She was 87 when I moved, living independently in Ohio, healthy enough by all appearances that neither my sister nor I felt any particular urgency about the geographic distance my move created. 14 months after I settled in Cebu, she had a stroke. I want to walk you through the actual mechanics of what that distance meant in a genuine emergency, because I think the abstraction of being far from family does not fully register until you are living inside the specific timeline of a crisis. My sister called me at what was, in the Philippines, 3 in the morning. The earliest flight I could secure had a layover that put my total travel time at just under 26 hours. My mother had already been through emergency surgery and had stabilized somewhat by the time I landed, which I remained genuinely grateful for. But I missed the entire acute phase of the most frightening medical event of her life, and I missed it by roughly a full day. A day that existed entirely because of the distance I had chosen to put between us. She has since recovered reasonably well, with some lingering mobility limitations, but that 26-hour gap between the phone call and my arrival is something I have not been able to fully make peace with, and I do not expect that I will. Before I go further into what actually trapped me here, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we cover the financial and practical realities that most retirement content leaves out, and next week, I am covering the specific health and family proximity questions every senior needs to answer honestly before relocating abroad. Not the questions the travel videos ask, but the ones that actually matter in a crisis. Subscribe now, because I wish I had seen that video before I made my decision. Here is the part of this story that I think is the most important, and the part that explains the word never in this video's title, because I want to be precise rather than dramatic. I cannot simply reverse this decision, and understanding exactly why has become the central practical challenge of the past 2 years of my life. The math is straightforward and unforgiving. My remaining assets combined with my Social Security income allow me to live comfortably here in the Philippines, where my total monthly expenses run approximately $1,100. Those same assets and that same income applied to the current cost of housing, healthcare, and general living expenses in the specific part of Arizona where my support network, my old community, and my mother's proximity all existed, would not sustain a comparable quality of life. I ran the actual numbers 3 months ago, during a period when the accumulated weight of the distance from my mother had pushed me to seriously investigate moving back. A modest one-bedroom apartment, not a house, in a reasonably safe area near my old community, currently rents for approximately $2,100 a month. My Social Security benefit covers slightly less than half of that figure on its own, and the remainder of my savings, stretched across a projected 15 to 20-year retirement at that burn rate, would not last. I am, in the most literal financial sense, priced out of returning to the exact life I left, and the gap did not exist when I made my original decision. It opened gradually, month by month, while I was living an ocean away, unaware it was happening, until I actually sat down and calculated it directly. I want to be fair to the country I live in, because I do not want this video to become something it is not. Cebu itself has been, in most practical respects, exactly what the research promised. The cost of living is genuinely low. The health care I have accessed on the several occasions I have needed it has been prompt and dramatically less expensive than equivalent care would have cost in the United States. The people in my neighborhood have been consistently warm, and I have built something resembling a genuine social circle here over 4 years, including a group of fellow American retirees who meet most weeks and who have become, in a limited but real sense, a support system. None of that is the regret. The regret is structural, not experiential. I did not fully understand when I made this decision at 59 years old, still feeling capable and independent, and decades away from needing anyone's help, that I was also making a decision on behalf of a future version of myself who would eventually need to be close to aging parents, or who might eventually need the kind of medical infrastructure that exists in the United States for genuinely serious conditions that Philippine healthcare, while perfectly adequate for most needs, is not currently equipped to handle at the same level for certain complex or highly specialized cases. Let me give you the second specific piece of the trap, because I think it is the one people underestimate most severely. My Medicare coverage, which I had paid into for over 4 decades before I left, does not function here. I purchased international health insurance, which has served me reasonably well for the ordinary medical needs I have encountered. But Medicare enrollment carries specific timing rules, and if my mother's situation, or my own health, were to require a genuine return to full-time American residency and American healthcare infrastructure, re-establishing my Medicare coverage at the level I would have had if I had simply remained enrolled and residing in the United States is not automatic. There are gaps, penalties for late enrollment in certain supplemental coverage, and administrative complications that I did not fully investigate before I left, because at 59, healthy and independent, the question felt abstract and distant rather than the concrete practical trap it has since become. I called my financial advisor 2 months ago, the same one who had, at the time of my original move, run projections that supported the decision as financially sound, and asked her directly what my actual options were. Her answer was honest and not particularly comforting. I could return to the United States, but I would need to significantly downsize my expectations of what that return looked like, likely relocating to a considerably lower cost area than where my family and old community are actually located, which would partially defeat the purpose of returning at all. Or I could remain here, accepting the distance from my mother as a permanent feature of my remaining years, managing it through video calls and periodic visits that, as her health continues to decline with age, will become increasingly insufficient for what an aging parent in genuine decline actually needs from her children. I do not have a clean resolution to offer you at the end of this video, and I think that absence of resolution is actually the most honest and useful thing I can give you. I am currently splitting the difference in a way that satisfies neither option fully. I return to the United States for roughly 10 weeks a year staying with my sister and helping with our mother's care during those stretches, while maintaining my primary residence here because the financial math genuinely does not permit anything else at this stage. It is not what I planned. It is not what any of the retirement content I consumed before making my decision prepared me for. If you are watching this and seriously considering a similar move, I am not telling you not to do it, because for many people, with different family circumstances and different risk tolerances, it remains a genuinely good decision. What I am telling you, as directly as I can, is to run the numbers on what returning would cost before you leave, not after, because housing markets move while you are gone, and the gap can close faster than you expect. Have an honest conversation with your Medicare and Social Security Administration about exactly what reestablishing full coverage would require, in writing, before you depart. And have the hardest conversation of all, the one about your parents' actual health trajectory and what genuine geographic distance means in the specific timeline of a medical emergency. Not the comfortable, hypothetical version of that conversation, but the real one, with real numbers about flight times and real honesty about what you would be trading. I did not have that conversation clearly enough with myself 4 years ago, and I am living, quite literally, with the consequences of that gap every single day. Subscribe to Mason Parker USA and turn on the notification bell. Share this with someone you know who is seriously considering a move like mine, because they deserve the full picture, not just the part that makes for a beautiful video. I will see you in the next one. There is one more piece of this I want to address directly, because I think it is the question sitting underneath everything else I have told you, and I would be leaving this video incomplete without it. People ask me, reasonably, why I do not simply sell my place here and use whatever proceeds remain, combined with what is left of my original settlement, to make the return work regardless of the downsizing it would require. The honest answer is that I have run those numbers more than once, and the version of American life on the other side of that calculation is not one I am currently willing to accept, which is its own kind of trap, separate from the purely financial one. It would mean a studio apartment or a shared living arrangement in a part of the country far from both my sister and my mother, because even the reduced cost areas near them remain beyond what the combined proceeds would sustainably support for the remainder of my expected retirement. It would mean, in practical terms, trading a genuinely comfortable and socially connected life here for a genuinely constrained and isolated one there, in exchange only for proximity, and I have not yet been able to convince myself that proximity alone justifies that particular trade, even accounting for my mother's health. I recognize how that sounds, and I want to be honest that I am not entirely at peace with my own reasoning on this point. It is possible that in 5 years, watching her decline further, I will look back on this current calculation and consider it the wrong one. That uncertainty, the genuine possibility that I am making an error I will not be able to fully assess until it is too late to correct, is itself part of what I mean when I say I regret this decision. Not a clean, simple regret with an obvious correction available, but the more difficult kind, where you remain uncertain, years later, whether the choice you are continuing to make each day is the right one, and where the cost of finding out for certain may be higher than either version of the outcome.